Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Your boy Microphone back again with another NFL video, and today might be one of our most controversial videos to date. So I'm gonna get straight to it, but before I do that, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you drop a like and subscribe and turn notifications on. We are almost at 10,000 subscribers that turned on our notifications and almost at 50,000 total subscribers in almost 2 months. That's absolutely insane. When I started this channel, I didn't think we'd get there. So if you really want to join our journey, let's try to get 50,000 subscribers together. Make sure you hit that sub button. Now, without further ado, I know most of us have sat through and watched this offseason way more than we would have in years past. And that's because, well, we're dealing with a pandemic and there's not really much sports information other than at the NFL and when sports are going to resume. So with that being said, this is probably the most captivating type of content we could create, as today we're going to be looking at multiple teams that had very big off seasons to make or break themselves and appear to be heading in the wrong direction. Now, of course, some of these teams are in worse shape than others, and this is not going to go in any sort of order. And of course, I am human, so there might be a team that you think is currently trending the wrong way that I omit, or there's a team on this list that you feel like is trending the right way that shouldn't be included. Regardless, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, because I do make these videos so we could have a nice discussion in the comment section. Now, the first team that I want to add here is the Chicago Bears, and it's really tough to see anything positive happening with the Chicago Bears, mainly because 3 years ago they moved up in the NFL draft, in the 2017 NFL draft, and gave up a third-round pick to do so with the San Francisco 49ers to draft a quarterback that appears to be trending towards bust territory. Now, look, I'm very cautious when I use the B word, and I'm assuming that Mitchell Trubisky's statistics don't really do him justice in terms of how bad Bears fans claim he is. I thought he had a little bit of a regression this year, but not so much that it warrants trying to move on from him so soon. But that's not the only issue I have. Of course, bringing in Nick Foles is a smart move to make in case Mitchell Trubisky doesn't pan out for sure, and it appears that's the way things are trending. But even furthermore, they just paid a journeyman defensive end in Robert Quinn an obscene amount of money, and he hasn't really provided a track record to show me that he deserves that type of money. Robert Quinn is going into his 9th year in the NFL, and yeah, he had a phenomenal season for the Dallas Cowboys last year with 11.5 sacks, next to DeMarcus Lawrence. For the year prior, he got 6.5 sacks. The year before that, he had 8.5 sacks, and the year before that, he had 4. The year before that, he had 5. You get where I'm going with this. And the year prior, he had 10.5. So inconsistency is a fairly consistent theme of Robert Quinn's career. Now, for all you know, this 30-year-old signing could end up doing very well for the Chicago Bears. I personally am not a huge believer in trying to pay journeyman ends to potentially shore up any holes I have in my defense or on my offense. But hey, if you have a different philosophy to this, please let me know in the comment section down below. Because the Bears signed Quinn to a 5-year, $70 million deal with $30 million fully guaranteed, and are currently stuck with a former top 5 pick at the quarterback position that they drafted over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson that they appear to be getting ready to move on from. That isn't good. Now, speaking of teams that completely are pooping the bed in terms of direction and scheme, and especially a team that was on the cusp of making it to the Super Bowl 3 years ago, we have to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is going to be very painful for Doug Marrone, because you go from having a defense that features a defensive line of former top 5 overall picks. They had Marcel Darius on that line. They had, of course, Malik Jackson wasn't a top 5 pick, but they had Dante Fowler on that line. And then one of their defensive backs was freaking Jalen Ramsey, who was starting to look like the next coming of Deion Sanders, only he could hit and tackle players. And then they just decided to move on from him. Now, at the moment, I do applaud them for trading Jalen Ramsey. There's no point in having a cornerback that you're going to pay that much if your entire team is headed towards a full-scale rebuild. But it just seems like the Jacksonville Jaguars are going more and more backwards and are punting on probably the best era of their football team in over 20 years. you have to bear in mind that this is a team that had a ton of studs, and now they're all gone. It's kind of crazy to think. AJ Boye, Jalen Ramsey, Tayshaun Gibson, Malik Jackson, Marcel Darius, Dante Fowler, and you guys heard what happened with Telvin Smith. I don't even want to get into what happened with him. And now they're trying to move on from Leonard Fournette. They didn't even pick up his option. So I don't know. When I made a video on Leonard Fournette recently, some of you guys had a different opinion on him. You felt like he typically inflates his statistics and it's best for the Jaguars to move on from him. But it's just so painful to watch what the Jaguars are doing after coming so close to sniffing success. They're just backpedaling from this point on. This is before the fact that we even mentioned that the Jacksonville Jaguars paid Nick Foles an obscene amount of money last offseason only to trade him this offseason. But what's surprising me the most is the fact that they trade Calais Campbell, they trade AJ Boye, they're in the midst of trying to trade Yannick Ngakoue, which is going to be very tough considering the fact that this guy's going on Twitter yelling about how much he hates being on the Jaguars. Now look, not all hope is lost for the Jags. I really like the selection of CJ Henderson, although I thought it was a bit of a reach, and I love the fact that they were able to pick up K'Lavon Chaisson, which I actually thought was a bit of a steal, to be honest. But it just feels so weird getting rid of Calais Campbell, having a very disgruntled Yannick Ngakoue, and then trading several Pro Bowlers and just starting over and punting on your probably the most successful season you've had in a while. You just can't help but wonder what if they actually got a good quarterback instead of Blake Bortles. So I'm afraid to include this next team here because I'm not used to ever saying anything that this team does is wrong. But I have to because I don't know if you guys understand what they're doing, because I certainly don't understand what they're doing. And that's the New England Patriots. After looking at their draft, I'm kind of confused. After looking at their free agency, I'm very confused. Is Bill Belichick really about to go into this season with Jarrett Stidham as his quarterback instead of Tom Brady? Is he really going to try to tank for Trevor Lawrence? Is that really a thing that Bill Belichick would do? I feel like he's too competitive of a guy to do such a thing, but the roster is in absolute shambles. Now, look, you can never question a head coach like Bill Belichick. For all you know, they could have one of the most quietest off seasons of all time and then completely turn the league on its head and get out a 11-5 season this season. That's why I'm being a little bit wary when I include them here. Now, the fact that I don't really see how they're moving on from Tom Brady and the fact that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have so much momentum kind of inclines me to include the New England Patriots on this list, but I can't do so with the utmost confidence because, again, it's the New England Patriots. It's like me saying that the Golden State Warriors were going to suck in the beginning of this year despite them losing Kevin Durant. I just can't bring myself to do it. I believe in the culture of the New England Patriots so much, just as I believe in the culture of the Golden State Warriors. But for now, it appears as if the New England Patriots are kind of having their team ruined. What's really surprising to me is the fact that they did nothing to replace Tom Brady, and as much of a believer I am in Bill Belichick's coaching, you have to understand Tom Brady threw for 4,000 plus yards and 24 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions last year. And dude, did you see what this guy had for wide receivers? It was absolutely disgusting. So the fact that there was no investment in wide receivers this year, especially in a wide receiver class that is supposed to be very, very promising, and no attempt to get a successor in the NFL draft at all, I am inclined to include the New England Patriots on this list. Up next, I have to talk about the Green Bay Packers because the way they handled this offseason was probably the worst way they could have handled this offseason. Look, I understand that the general manager of the Green Bay Packers felt like it was necessary to draft Jordan Love, and there's this report where Matt LaFleur came out and said this was the general manager's decision, not so much mine. But come on, the head coach has to have had a say in this. The coach has to go to the general manager and say, hey, Jordan Love fits into my scheme beautifully. So I really don't buy that. I feel like that's just him trying to, appease Aaron Rodgers in some way. But the fact of the matter is Aaron Rodgers is turning 37 in December, and I guess the Green Bay Packers have been spoiled in the past, moving from one Hall of Fame quarterback to another. But when you have a quarterback that is probably going to squeeze out maybe 3 to 4 more years of his prime to try to make your team a Super Bowl contender, you should do your best to get him as much help as you possibly can. And not only did the Green Bay Packers not do that, and they didn't even try to get him more help on defense. As a matter of fact, the Green Bay Packers drafted his replacement. Now, imagine being Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure this would rub you the wrong way. And now Green Bay has to deal with a coy, passive-aggressive quarterback who is notorious for being passive-aggressive over the slightest thing that could frustrate him. Again, this is a guy that disliked Mike McCarthy because worked for the San Francisco 49ers as an offensive coordinator, and the San Francisco 49ers, despite it not being Mike McCarthy's decision at all, opted to draft Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers. And to this day, Aaron Rodgers bore a grudge against Mike McCarthy, and it got so crazy that, of course, Mike McCarthy had to move on. Look, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this sound one-sided. What I'm trying to give you an idea about is Aaron Rodgers' personality. You know, he is who he is. You have to accept him for who he is. If all these articles and all these rumors of him being a fairly difficult personality come out, you got to do whatever it takes to make this man happy. And drafting his replacement may give you leverage over him in a situation, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a lot of trouble finding suitors should he want to move on from the Green Bay Packers. The fact of the matter is the Packers let Blake Martinez leave in free agency, and then as opposed to trying to get Aaron Rodgers the help he needs, they turned around and drafted Jordan Love, number 26 overall. That is a great way to ruin your team. Now, the final team that I want to include on this list is the Houston Texans. Now, look, man, I don't think this needs much of an explanation. You have Bill O'Brien trading DeAndre Hopkins. That's what pops into my mind immediately. And they decided to move him for less than a first-round pick in return and a halfback that's past his prime, that's on a huge contract, and then immediately decided to sign Randall Cobb to a 3-year, $27 million deal. Now, bear in mind, the Texans didn't have a first-round pick this year because they traded 2 first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil, which I guess you could say is a good move. Any move that assists Deshaun Watson in any way whatsoever, in my opinion, is a good move. But they also gave up on Jadeveon Clowney for nothing, which in hindsight is again looking like a good move because Clowney to this day is not signed. But what surprises me the most is they remove DeAndre Hopkins, and then they trade for David Johnson, and then they trade for Brandon Cooks after a sub 600-yard season. And now they have to pay him a ton. And then they have to start negotiating a contract with Deshaun Watson. And dude, if I'm Deshaun Watson, bro, I'm sorry if you're a Texans fan, but if I'm Deshaun Watson, as soon as my contract's up, bro, I am either playing on the franchise tag year after year or I am getting the hell out of there, because the Houston Texans clearly are moving in the wrong direction and by far have to be my top team that appears to be absolutely clueless as to how to run an organization. Now, I know that could be a little bit harsh, but if you look at the moves that they made this past offseason, I'm sure you would agree with me. Guys, make sure you're following me on Twitch, because we do these Madden simulations. I have every single draft class on Twitch, so it's a lot of fun. We resim the entire league, and we get to see all the crazy stuff that goes on. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Microphone, and I'm signing out.